All right, welcome into One of One Sport. This weekend there were a bunch of great basketball games and the NBA All-Star game. So we're going to do a weekend college basketball reaction since there were a ton of big games with a ton of huge implications. Starting off with the game of the week, and you got to go with the Iron Bowl of basketball, Auburn, Alabama. For a game to be 1 versus 2 and have all this hype, it mostly lived up to it, right? Maybe not quite as good of a game as some people were hoping for, but a great game nonetheless and one of the most anticipated games in really the past few seasons of college basketball. You had the first place in the SEC on the line, which is widely considered to be the best conference in college basketball this year. Coming into this weekend, I think they had projected 14 teams to make the NCAA tournament, according to Joe Lenardi. And you have some of the best players in the sport. Janai Broome, maybe the front runner for player of the year, and I gave him player of the game for this. We'll talk about that in a second. But so just the stakes within the conference, who's going to win the conference crown, and then the bracket as a whole, who's going to be the number one overall seed, as well as it being an interstate rivalry, really made this a special game that you're not going to see very often. And it was great that we were able to have this game. So now breaking it down a little, I think Auburn proved what I thought they would prove, and that is that they are the best team in the sport. I picked them to win this game, even on the road, and they were even slightly more impressive, especially defensively, than I thought they would be. And I'll talk about the Alabama side in a second. But Gemini Broome played a great game, gave him player of the year, another double double. He had a great defensive impact, and he came out of the gate playing really well, hitting a couple of threes that you're not going to normally see him hit, one being a step back. He clearly came to give a great performance, had a fadeaway mid range as well, just playing all around. And Auburn just showcased they can beat you in so many different ways, whether it's Pettiford pulling up in transition, Baker Mazzara hitting threes, but also getting steals. They just beat you in so many ways and have so many players that can hurt you that even on the road against maybe the second best team in the sport, they clearly look like the better team. And it never, I like even Alabama had a comeback to make it close at the end, and then Auburn pulled away again, and it just seemed like they were clearly the better team, which is saying a lot in this type of environment. And I think it was big for them to get this one because last weekend you were at home and Florida just took it to you. Florida dominated Auburn in what was really a shocking turn of events. So if they had lost another game to one of the top teams in the SEC, questions could have started to rise. So big for them to get this win. And then Alabama side, this is really what concerns me about Alabama during March is you have so much reliance on the 3-point shot that in a something like the NBA, right, where there's a 7-game series, one bad night doesn't kill you if you go cold from three. And now part of this is Auburn's defense, but when you shoot as poorly as Alabama did from 3-point range, and you're not going to go for mid-range jumpers or really like so much of the offense revolves around the three that when they go cold, all it's going to take is one bad night in March and they'll be out early. And that's just something that really concerns me about Alabama pretty much every year they play with Nate Oates as their coach and use this same style of play. And they're still a great team, but it's just something that makes me more concerned about them going out early than a team like Auburn that I think's game is more consistent on a game-to-game basis than Alabama's. So yeah, final takeaways, Auburn sets themselves up to win the SEC, but it's not over. They still have to beat Alabama again, and the SEC has so many good teams that you don't know if they're going to drop another one. But they're in good position. Should definitely or are in great position also to be the number one seed in the tournament. Moving on to my most impressive team, and that was Houston defeating Arizona on the road 62-58. Now you could argue Auburn was the most impressive, but I'm not going to talk about them twice in a row. So I went with Houston, and the player of the game was Milos Uzan. Could have gone with LJ Cryer as well. He had a couple of big threes down the stretch that helped Houston to win this game. And they said, if you watch this game, the commentary crew pointed out it was like a classic Houston game where they get outplayed for like 35 minutes of the game, and then that final 5-minute stretch find a way to get the win. And we've seen this a few times this year. I mean, Kansas probably still trying to figure out how did we lose that game where it looked like they beat them in regulation, and that it looked like he definitely beat them in overtime, and somehow Houston ends up winning that game in just stunning fashion. And this wasn't, as shocking, but certainly for the vast majority of the game, and because I thought U of A was going to win coming in, and throughout the game, I was like, yeah, Arizona's going to win this game. And then missed free throws by Arizona, a team that started out, I believe, 10 for 10 in this game, and then went 3 for 7 or 4 for 7 down the stretch, missing 1-and-1s and just crucial shots. And then kind of having to hunt threes because they went down, and it just all fell apart in this final stretch. And Houston, everything, like their players, clutch free throws. Jawan Roberts, a 60% shooter. He steps to the line, hits two. Arsenu, hopefully I'm saying his name right, he hit two. And there were some, you can point out, they were turning the ball over down the end that was keeping Arizona alive, but to still come out with a win even in doing so was pretty impressive. I would like to see, though, their players take better care of the ball, because that could be concerning. But this pretty much, for me, it makes me very confident Houston's winning the Big 12, because this now gives you a two-game advantage on Arizona and the head-to-head. So because of this, Houston virtually locked up the regular season Big 12 title. And because of that, I think they are in prime position now to move up to the 1 seed line, because I think one of either Alabama or Florida, because I think Auburn and Duke are pretty safe, are at risk of dropping down to that 2 seed line because of how difficult the SEC is. I think they're bound to pick up a couple more losses, or at least one more loss, and Houston has the potential to move up to that 1 seed line, which we know is huge in March. On the Arizona side of things, you just got to hit your free throws down the stretch. And I think coaching plays a part of this, because you weren't really getting great shots at the end of the game the way you were getting decent shots for most of the game. And, Carter Bryant, he missed some free throws. He hit the big three. But even a guy like KJ Lewis, he takes a bad shot at the end. Jaden Bradley is a wide open three, misses it. You need these guys who are veterans, who are the big, your best players on the team, the guys you trust the most, to hit these kind of shots. Not saying they can't. It just didn't happen today. I don't think you're a bad team by any means, but I do think Houston showed they're the top of the Big 12, and Arizona is more in that like Texas Tech, Iowa State range right now, the second tier, trying to move up and prove they can be a true threat. Now moving on to the Big Ten games, specifically these three are the ones I wanted to talk about. Starting from the left side, Wisconsin had, I would argue, the best offensive performance of the weekend, hitting 72% of their shots in their second half to get a huge road win. And, the committee revealed, or I can't remember if Wisconsin was in the top 16 teams that the committee revealed, but if they weren't, this would certainly have put them there. Huge win. And now Purdue to pick up your second loss in a row in the Big Ten, losing to Michigan and now Wisconsin in a game at home that you should have won. That's concerning. It's going to probably hurt your seeding a little bit, hurts your chances of winning the Big Ten regular season crown, and just raise concerns for me about their defense, the way Wisconsin just completely scored at will, hit like everything in the second half. Now, I'm not saying Purdue's defense is as bad as it looked on Saturday, but certainly concerning. And now, like kind of the exact opposite, Illinois' offense didn't score the final 8.5 minutes in a game they may have been leading. I think it was at least tied those 65-65, and they just didn't score for almost, the latter half of the second half, 8.5 minutes almost, which is just ridiculous considering the talent on that roster. You're going to have a top 10 pick at point guard. That's just unacceptable to have that kind of thing happen in an opportunity like this against a team that's going to be, a top 4 seed, top 4-3 line probably, a chance to get that win at home and to just completely unravel offensively down the stretch. You can't have that happen. And now Michigan State, you stay alive in the Big Ten race and you pull within half a game of Michigan. Almost would have been able to take the lead. A very tight game happened between Michigan and Ohio State Sunday, but Michigan was able to get another close victory. And this just goes to show the improvement or the change, how important the coaching change was at Michigan. They've recently beaten Penn State, Purdue, Michigan State, Indiana. I'm sure I'm forgetting some teams too, but all in but within 5 points, like 1 or 2 possession games. And under Juwan Howard, those were just losses. This team under Juwan Howard was terrible in close games, in game-winning scenarios, and that's completely changed under Dusty May, which is why I think he should get at least a decent amount of votes for Coach of the Year. Not saying he should win it, but he should be up there. And Michigan getting another close win keeps them atop of the Big Ten, and they're really the big winners here because Purdue has now dropped to 2 games behind them. And Michigan State is still half a game behind them, and Michigan State and Purdue have to play each other. So Michigan is in a good position right now to win the Big Ten regular season race and move up even higher in their seeding. Right now, you're probably at 4. I could see them getting to that 3 line, and I think they're going to cause problems in March. And they're my favorite team in the Big Ten to cause problems because of this Danny Wolf Golden duo. The size I think can give a lot of teams problems. Moving on to the SEC games where we have a lot of winners and losers. There were a ton of important games. Starting off, I think the biggest winner, probably Texas. Trey Johnson, the true freshman star for them, had maybe his best game of the year. I think he scored 32. This is one I think you had to have. You're right there on the bubble. You've lost a couple. Alabama embarrassed you in an opportunity you had there. I think you needed to bounce back, and you did it, defeating Kentucky, who's obviously on our losers side of this. And they're not huge losers, but a close win, I mean, in a close game, you had a chance to win it. But they're just a minor loser, still a very good team that the committee showed a lot of favorability towards, because I did not think they would be as high as they were in the initial release. So they clearly have a little bit of leeway with how high the committee ranked them. Then Missouri, I thought was really impressive. It was a back and forth game for a long time, and I thought Georgia could do essentially a similar thing to what Texas did, being on the bubble, get a huge win at home over a ranked team. And then the final half of the second half, Missouri was just dominant offensively, and Georgia's offense completely stalled. And now Georgia's probably on the wrong side of the bubble, which is why they're a major loser from this weekend. Florida, really impressive again in the second half. You start off, or this back-to-back games now where you're close at halftime, completely pull away in the second half. Very impressive. Then Texas A&M, I have them as a winner, but more so it's Arkansas as a loser. Having a tie game, I think about 5 minutes left, and then another blown opportunity. They're now on the wrong side of the bubble. Tennessee and Vanderbilt, we got to talk about as well, because Vanderbilt, this was a huge, huge opportunity that you had. You were dominant in the first half, and then you let Zakai Ziegler go for 22 in the second half, and you still have an opportunity to win it, and it just slips away. They're probably still on the right side of the bubble for now, but with how hard the schedule is, you're going to have another game against Kentucky. You have so many difficult games left, almost all of them against ranked opponents. This was one that could have ensured, or at least given you a really strong chance of making the tournament. And now I think your chances are looking a little under 50%. Biggest loser, got to go Oklahoma. That game, absolutely, you cannot lose, and you should not have lost. Had the game won against LSU, a team that's really struggled in SEC play, you're on the bubble. The easy wins you have to have, and to just collapse in the final seconds of that game to allow LSU to pull out an improbable victory is brutal. They're the biggest loser. And then the last teams on here, Mississippi State. I didn't catch the full game of this, but I thought this was a game Ole Miss would win, and Mississippi State handled them. And the parts I did watch, it wasn't particularly close. Very impressed by them. Ole Miss, obviously a loser. Other things of note, and the final things I'll talk about in this video. St. John's defeats Creighton and pulls away in the Big East race, setting themselves up to win the regular season crown and be a very high seed in March. Similar story with New Mexico. They pull away, beating Utah State, who was their main competition in the Mountain West. So now they're looking very likely to win the regular season Mountain West crown and move up potentially as high as a 7 or a 6 seed in March. Right now, probably around an 8. Other notes, I thought Wake Forest beating SMU was surprising and kept them alive, and actually gives them a decent chance to be the 4th representative out of the ACC. I think the ACC is probably only getting 4 teams. And then BYU got an important win, stopping the Kansas State hot streak and helping their cases on the bubble. If there's anything I missed or you think I should have talked about, make sure to leave it down in the comments below. If you made it this far, I really appreciate it. Thank you guys for watching. Leave a like, subscribe to help me grow the channel. Until next time.